Hello, welcome to the Kindness Podcast Live. I am so happy that you would join me today. We are going to be talking with award-winning movie producers, two of them, and Kahane, Cooperman, and John Hoffman have put together an amazing documentary about kindness. And it's maybe not the kindness, like, oh, it feels so good and it's so fluffy and it reminds me of rainbows, but this is the kindness that, if really looked at intentionally, can change this world. And isn't that what we need? So I am super excited to bring on today Kahane and John. Thank you so much for creating The Antidote, the movie, the documentary. It is really special. And I'm wondering if you can just start by explaining to people what you were trying to accomplish when you first sat down and said, what if we did a movie about kindness? And I'll let whoever wants to take that question go for it, and then I'll prompt you through who the questions are for next time. So Kahane? Oh, you're muted. She'll unmute because I know
I misunderstood. I thought you wanted me to mute for some reason. Anyway, forgive me. I'm so happy to be here to talk about this with you and for what you're doing. It was about 2018 when some mutual filmmaker friends introduced me to John Hoffman, who I had heard about but had never met through his filmmaking and executive positions and reputation. And we met. He had already, as he can tell you, already raised a significant amount of money for a film about one word, kindness. And this was 2018. And it was a time when it was, there was a pervasive feeling of civility crumbling beneath us. And just on a personal level, I was concerned, but also like mystified. I didn't recognize it as something familiar in a way. And I just thought, what an interesting opportunity to explore this aspect of being human at this time when it felt like all around us, this idea of, how we treat each other seemed to be just fragile and falling apart. So John and I agreed to work together, and he can take it from there. But we went on this incredible journey with a small team to explore what kindness means and the role of it in a civil democracy. And the result is, I think, in our film, I hope. And John can tell you more about maybe how we got there.
Yeah, please do, John.
Well, we, as Kahane mentioned, we had the generous resources from a major nonprofit to make a film with no constraints. If you're going to make a film in 2018 into 2019 in this moment in America about kindness, what kind of stories would you tell? How would you explore that? And we started thinking that it's not just kindness; it's compassion, it's empathy. It's decency. And we started talking to so many people who look at all those areas, all those aspects of humanity, but from the position of philosophy or political science or evolutionary biology. And we just talked to many people. We read a tremendous amount, and we had put together a small team. And at a certain point, we said, okay, we've probably learned about as much as you need to learn in the kind of book learning sense of it. Let's put all that aside. We know we want to tell a number of stories in this film. We know that there is not one place that you could go that could capture all that we've learned. Let's put all that aside and let's do this visioning exercise where we say, okay, the film is done, it's out there. Are there questions that we want the film to have answered? We will feel good at the end of the day when this film is out in the world that we've answered a series of questions. And so we started writing them. And we came up with 6 pretty simple questions, which are: how do we raise our children? How do we teach our children? How do we take care of the sick and the dying? How do we live and work together? How do we welcome the stranger? And how do we lead? And we thought, if we could make a film where you're not doing a one-to-one story about, child raising or education, but you're looking for, beautiful stories that, sort of examine, or give us the chance to examine these aspects of life. And we thought that those questions sort of go from birth to death. And they also are really about all the worlds that we probably move through: our homes, our communities, the institutions, that we spend time in, whether it's schools or hospitals, whatever it may be. And so we thought, okay, this is really helpful. These are foundational questions for how we start looking for stories. But then Charlottesville happened. And it was in the midst of already what seemed like an incredibly divisive and time in this country, with a growing sense of hate. But this took it to a whole other level. And it really demanded that we dig deeper in ourselves. And I'll give it to Kahane to talk a little bit more about that.
Well, when Charlottesville happened, it was a real reckoning, I think, for a lot of people in this country, to look at ourselves and to really wonder. Not that we were naive and going into this, obviously, there's a lot of issues here, but we realized that it wasn't enough to do stories that just answered these questions about kindness. We needed to see where the impetus to intentionally be kind in the stories that we were telling came from, and that we would be remiss in not acknowledging, frankly, the fundamental unkindnesses that so many Americans live with every single day. So in the same way that we identified these kind of 6 questions, tentpole questions, we came up with these fundamental unkindnesses. And, it's fundamentally unkind to not have a safe place to sleep, fundamentally unkind to not earn a living wage. It's fundamentally unkind to not have access to health care. And the injustices of racism, fundamentally unkind. And homophobia, sexism are both fundamentally unkind. And we took those unkindnesses and we looked at our questions, and together they became the lens through which we started looking for our stories. We felt like we really had to give context for the intentional kindness, the intentional lifting of others up in these various communities that we explored, give context for why that was needing to happen. So while the film is solutions-based and oriented, it's not without acknowledging deeply the problems that have plagued so many of our fellow citizens, if not for years, then decades, and in some cases centuries. And so that is part of why we knew this couldn't be a light look at kindness.
Right.
And I know that's important to you too, Nicole.
It is. And when I saw that you not only were talking about kindness and different, your tent poles, as you said, but also what broke us, what broke us as people. And then from there, how do we heal us? And so I get feisty when people look at kindness as, the rainbows and the cotton candies and bubble gum, because I have seen the transformative power in my life and the lives of people I love who have been intentional and systematic about kindness. And I feel like, Kahane, did you see that in this film? Was it more than just, oh, it's all great?
I mean, not only did we see it, it was part of the criteria for the stories we were looking for. And that's not to diminish random acts of kindness. Like, God bless. Those are great. And,
Right, they're important.
this really was about intentionality.
Yeah.
And so each story, we looked at hundreds of stories to arrive at the 9 that appear in the film and 4 more as short films on our website. And intentionality was one of like the top criteria. And to look at kindness as, not being, we had to push against this perception of it being soft, and not look at it like that, and look at it as a tool, like a fierce weapon, although I don't want to maybe use that word, but a fierce weapon of change.
Yeah.
It's how we treat each other. That can change everything. It can change an individual life, and it can change a community's intention amongst itself, and then that can be in the whole country, and it can change a feeling that people have towards each other. So
did you feel like it was difficult to maintain that the intentionality of it, and really get that message of true kindness across, and yet still be entertaining to people? Because somebody doesn't want to sit there and be lectured. They don't want that. They want to feel good. They want to feel a release. So how did you maintain that balance?
Well, it was not hard at all, because the people that that you meet in the film, the places that we went, all the stories are based in institutions and organizations that are well established and have a very strong philosophy about how they provide the service that they do provide, whether it's to the healthcare for the homeless or it's the raising of foster children. There is tremendous art and design to the work that they're doing, and they are leading. So how do we lead? They are leading with very, very intentional, with kindness at the forefront of their whole approach to whether it's care or teaching. And so, everywhere we went, we knew going in from our conversations with them on the phone, leading up to that, we knew that these are people who have given tremendous thought to all these issues. They have a wonderful way, every one of them completely unique in how they express, their philosophy about, how and why they do the work that they do, and how they're really trying to make the world, a better place. And so I hope you were inspired by the words of the people that you met. They required, all we had to do is just bring the camera and just turn it on, and the beauty of their words and their actions are right there in front of us.
It is. It's authentic. It is right there. I'm curious what each of you was surprised by as you were meeting these people. John, do you want to start with that?
I really think that it is that these people they're so humble, they're so modest, everybody that we spent time with, that we would be interested in their work and the service that they provide, that we would be seeing them as people who are really worthy of attention, because they really will open up conversation that we want to have happen in at the kitchen table, at the boardroom, at the city council. That the way that they approach their work is worthy. I think that was what was surprising, is that they were all so modest and almost surprised, like, us. Really? You want to come here? Okay. But, I think that's, but I don't think we would have been interested in them if they didn't have that level of modesty.
Right. It sounds like that's the reason we are interested in you, because they are true servants.
Right.
Kahane, what surprised you?
I think, the idea that people are essentially most people are essentially good didn't surprise me at all. And it's easy to say, like, oh, was it really hard to find these stories? The fact of the matter was, once we sort of had our lens, it was not hard to find these stories because, and you might notice when you watch the film where we weave 9 stories from all over the country together, we never identify anybody. We don't identify individuals or organizations. We only identify locations. And one of the connectors between stories or chapters of stories are these drone shots, because it was really important to give the impression that we were sort of dropping in on these communities, whether it's, the refugees in Anchorage, Alaska, or a community college in Amarillo, Texas, or a Baptist church in Decatur, Georgia, wherever it may be, that's where we happen to drop in, but that you can really drop in anywhere and find people doing this in any community in this country. I wasn't, when I came in 2018, I wasn't sure, I wasn't feeling that way. And it's, I don't want to sound naive, but I do feel like there's nowhere you can go where you can't find examples like the ones that we show, and that's what we have to lean in towards. So I guess the surprise is only of the time, because things are feeling so, fragile. Um, but one thing that helped me for the last 2 years on a totally personal level is like thinking about all the people we met. We might not have been in the classroom in Modesto, but I knew that the teacher, Sherry McIntyre, was there pre-COVID, teaching the next group of 9th graders those same incredible lessons, or I could name every character and subject in the story. But so I guess I don't know if that was a surprise, but it was a great thing to come to the realization of.
Things I wanted to ask you is something people ask me all the time. And it's, well, isn't there just more evil in the world than good? And I have a strong opinion on that. I'm wondering what both of your opinions are on that, and if it changed one way or the other after making this. Kahane, let's start with you, because it sounds like you were almost tipping into that before I even asked it.
I don't believe there's more evil than good. I mean, just to put it out there, I really don't. But I think that evil exists, and I think that it's really important for all of us humans to figure out to do what we can to figure out the roots of it and to try where possible, because I don't believe it's possible with every single group or people, but where possible to have conversations, talk to people who don't feel the same way you do. I'm not talking about extremists, but I'm talking about somewhere in there's got to be some common humanity, and we've lost our way to it. So I have no idea if that really answers the evil versus good question, but I just feel like it's worth seeking out that which I think connects us, which is goodness, rather than evil.
So, John, before we go to you, Kahani, a follow-up question to that then. Before you worked on this movie, would you have fallen in that camp of people who say, yeah, there's probably more bad than good in the world, and now you say there's more good than evil? Or
Absolutely not. I've always been my cup is half full of good.
okay,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
that was the mindset you went in.
That's my point of view.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, that is my point of view of people in life,
Okay.
for the most part.
How about you, John? To the people who say, oh, there's more bad, there's more evil in the world than good, what do you think?
Well, I'm with Kahane, and I genuinely believe that our communities are fundamentally good. I think, and I believe that the vast majority of humanity is fundamentally good. There are bad actors out there who know how to really almost prey on the sort of struggles of others to advance their causes. And we're living through that right now. And I really, the worrisome aspect of these times is that we have developed technologies that enable those voices to be easily amplified. And so I think that it's the way that it affects our perception is something that we have to be very mindful of. But I think that the experience of making this film is that we moved through so many different communities. And over and over and over again, our experience, not only in the actual filming, but the experience of just being in those communities, moving through those communities in every region of the country, it just confirmed what I said, is that I believe that our communities are fundamentally good. And I think that there are people in every community who are trying to make their communities good. And we wanted to make a film at a time when there's so much hate and division that was the antidote, shows that there is an antidote to that hate and division. And it is those important actors in our worlds that are forces for good.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, forces for good. What a beautiful thing to be called. The movie, The Antidote, is available on Amazon Prime Video. You can stream it. You can find out more information at theantidotemovie.com. Both really good resources. And of course, go watch the movie. It's absolutely a really deep, thoughtful documentary that furthers this conversation in a way that it really hadn't been before, I don't think, on in a movie setting. So, but before I let you go, and thank you for your work, both of you. Thank you for doing that, for furthering that conversation. Before I let you go, I would love it if one of you would share a favorite kindness story. I always love to leave people with just a little hope, a little inspiration, a little, yeah, there is good happening in the world. It exists. And so, which one of you would like to share a little kindness story?
I mean, I can share one related to the film, which is, it's kind of points to the ripple effect of kindness and witnessing it. A woman wrote to us who had seen the film, and one of the stories in the film is about a community college in Amarillo, Texas, and their acknowledgement that it's the school's responsibility to help these students, most of whom are first-generation college students, conquer the life barriers, not the academic barriers, but the life barriers that keep them from getting those degrees that can be life-changing for themselves, for their families, and their communities. So we follow, several students and the president and the philosophy of this. And our main subject is a single mom who benefits from the philosophy of this school. And someone who saw the film was influenced by this story so greatly that she had inherited a very small amount of money from her mom, who had been an immigrant and never realized her dreams. But she herself had been able to because of her own mom's sacrifices. So she called a school that she had gone to, taught at 10 years earlier, and said, I saw this movie and I want to help students. And so she created a modest but meaningful scholarship in her mom's name to help single moms get an education at that school. So I just thought, like, wow, that's fantastic. Yeah. So that's someone who, it's the ripple effect. They saw an example of something in our film and then asked themselves, like, what can I do? And how can I do something that lifts other people up? And I feel like that's such a good example of it. So that would be my one story.
I love it.
There's others, though.
Yeah, I'm sure there's so many, I'm sure. But that it just goes to prove, like, it's not the people who are wearing superhero capes that are changing the world. It's not those who are extravagantly wealthy or extravagantly intelligent or have all this extra time on their hands. It's just people who say, I could maybe do that. So
Exactly.
Kahane and John, for doing what you can do to bring about more kindness and help heal our broken world. I sure appreciate you both.
Well, we thank you.
Yeah, thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you for joining us on the Kindness Podcast today. And we hope that you will continue to join us in the future. Future upcoming guests include Dr. Gary Chapman of the 5 Love Languages. Nikki Koziars is going to join us with her book called Flooded. So we've got all kinds of great things coming up on these live broadcasts. And also, you can find them wherever you find your favorite audio podcasts. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me.